I'm Ben from Bear Float Reels, owner-operator. I'll talk to you a little bit about my product, and I'll talk to you about what the most common question I get is for people who are fishing the rivers with their spinning reel, as I did when I first started, and why they should abandon their spinning reel for one of these. So it's probably mid-'80s when I started fishing the rivers for steelhead and salmon. And there I was with my spinning reel. I wasn't able to drift very far. As much line as I had outside of my reel and in my hand, I would just toss it out, and 10, 12 feet would be the max, and then I'd pull in. And so I'm not really covering a lot of area. And I started seeing other anglers out there with maybe smaller diameter reels, but they were float reels. I thought they were some type of a fly reel, and only one day when I got tangled with one of them, and he was nice enough to explain it to me, he explained to me about the drift and the zone and being in that drift longer and the probability of hooking up on a fish because of that. He also explained to me the inherent problem that there is with the spinning reel. The face of the reel being perpendicular to the rod itself doesn't allow for line to spool off very easily. So you always had to manually pull out line from the spool, and that doesn't promote the most natural drift. You're tossing out a float with your bait below it, and you want it to be as natural as possible with the current. So with that spinning reel, you're pulling out line, and your float's jerking its way down. The fish see that, they're not too attracted to it, or they recognize that there's something wrong with that. So an inline float reel came about on the market sometime, I think, in the late 70s. Didn't catch on until about the 80s. And what that does is it allows the spool to be in line with the rod, and as you're drifting down the river, as it needs line, it just naturally pulls it out like that. So the biggest problem with the spinning reel, not only that you are manually pulling out line, is that when you actually did get a fish, you saw your float go down. With a spinning reel, you manually had to close the bail, reel in your excess slack before you could set hook. 5 to 10 seconds to do that operation. By that time, 9 times out of 10, the fish has spit the hook out and it's gone. With a float reel, the line is always taut, meaning it's always tight. There is no slack sitting outside the spool between the guides of the rod and the spool. The line is always taut. As soon as I see that float go down, I set hook. 1-to-1 ratio, all my reels are 5-inch, which allows for a pretty quick retrieval. And the ultimate drift is as far as you can see your float. So if that's 20 feet, if that's 50 feet, if that's 100 feet, and the river and the other anglers around you can allow for that, you can really cover a lot of space with it. How many in the audience are actual centerpin fishermen? Okay, that's good. I'm glad to be talking to you guys because you'll appreciate why you use these types of reels. So this is a standard centerpin reel. All of them do a free spool mode, like I'm doing right now, and that allows for a drift. And all of them have a clicker mode, which some people use it as a somewhat of a drag system. When they catch the fish, they can put it in clicker mode. But primarily it's for travel, it's for packing up the reel so that your spool just doesn't spin and your line goes everywhere. And if you're moving spots on the river, so you get to the river, it looks good, you want to try a pool for 15, 20 minutes. If you fished it out, or if there's no luck and you want to move to another spot on the river, you usually have a 2 to 3 piece rod, you've got your float, you've got your bait on the line. That's a lot to dismantle just to move 50, 100 feet up the river. So you just take the hook it onto your line guide, reel in the excess line, put a little bend in your rod, the line's tight, and now you can move upriver even though you have a 13 to 15 foot rod. Problem is, I noticed with other reels that I used myself, and I paid attention to the complaints I saw on social media, from anglers to the respected reel builders. Make the clicker stronger, they all said. Why is that? Well, when they did hook up on the line guide, reeled in the excess line, put a little bend into their rod, the spring was never strong enough to hold the tension of the rod, and it would let go. So what you saw out there in the field were guys with hair elastics and elastic bands wrapped around the cork of their rod, and then they would take that band and wrap it around the handle to prevent the spool from spinning backwards. I thought it's time for some little innovation. I run a machine shop, I've got engineering, so let's put in a third setting that allows you to retrieve your excess line, and then it locks, so it's an anti-reverse. So that's a standard centerpin reel. With that extra feature, I call that a bear claw. I thought the name was hidden. I also have another style of reel. Looks very similar, but it's quite different actually. And this reel has a drag system. A little switch on the bottom allows you to be in free spool mode, and that's the way you're gonna fish, you're gonna drift. Moving that lever over engages your drag system, and then you have variable adjust with the center tension knob here, and that creates drag. So one of the things I didn't go over yet, with a standard center pin reel, and you're in free spool mode drifting down river, bobber goes down, you hook set, now you got a fish on. So how do you control that? You're in free spool mode. If you'll notice, there's a very nice radius on the edge of the reel here, and the angler will actually use his hand, almost like the caliper on a car, on the brake system, and he will use a manual drag system with his hand. It's a very rewarding feeling to land a fish using the center pin the way it was meant to be used, and using your hand as the drag system. But I found myself in many occasions with a very large fish, maybe perhaps a king salmon, very energetic, and as soon as the hook set happened, he was bullnosing straight up river. And to tire out, you know, a 15, 20, even a 25-pound salmon, you've got to chase that fish. You can't stand in one spot. So here I was running through the river, traversing over moss-covered rocks and stumps, and it got actually quite dangerous. I fell a few times, and that's the end of the day, really, if you fall, because you know you get wet, your pride's hurt, so you pretty much want to run away. So I thought, and that's literally how you're running upriver. One hand holding the rod and reel, the other hand holding the spool from spinning out of control, and that's your drag. So it's not the ideal situation to be in. If you did manage to get the fish to the riverbank, netting it, how do you do that? You have to take your hand, wrap it around the spool to prevent it from spinning so that you free up a hand to grab a net and net the fish. So many times I see guys just dragging the fish up on the rocks to get it onto shore. They're going to release it anyway, but why put the fish through that trauma? So I thought, why not implement a drag system, a variable adjust drag system? And the transition from spinning reel to center pin reel is that much more comforting to know that you have that drag system in place. I can't tell you how much frustration I had with that transition when I did do it, until I was comfortable with the reel, comfortable with how much pressure to apply with the drag setting, with my hand. And so many occasions, if I had that little extra help of having that drag system in place, I could free up a hand. And my drag system is now available in a 0 to 7 pound, 0 to 15, and even a 0 to 25. With a 25-pound drag system, this now became a very versatile reel, a 3-in-1, so to speak. This is not just now a river fishing reel. This is a trolling reel for freshwater lakes, for saltwater. There's guys mooching with them and trolling with them. So it's actually a very versatile reel. Any questions about my reels? So I've got a very interactive website where you can custom build your own reel online. It's a tab on the main page called Build Your Reel. It goes through a dozen different options that you can load up in them, and as you choose an option, it virtually creates an image for you so you can see what they look like and customize the porting that you like with the colors that you like. 17 different handles to choose from, ranging from plastic, acetal, to acrylics, to even wood, if that's what you'd like. And that's
Fantastic.
it. That's it. That's my product.
Absolutely. Did you show them how it spins? My favorite part.
They
So it's pretty cool.
They spin really great.
You spin it, you go for a walk around the show, and you come back and it still spins. These things are wild. If it's shiny, it spins, I like it. Alright. That is really good. Benny.
We're in booth 546. If you care to handle these and see them up close, come by and visit us. Website's www.bearfloatreels.com.
Ben from Bear Float Reels.
Thanks everyone. Enjoy the show.